Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DiFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by the ground control Cyclops Brewer from Voga Coffee. If you've heard me talk about this brewer over the course of the show, you'll know what a big fan I am of this brewer. Not just because it's a good brewer, but it's a revolutionary brewer. It actually creates better coffee because of the SCA award-winning technology that allows you to control an extremely broad range of flavor possibilities for your coffee and is really changing the game of batch brewing completely. Not only does this brew amazing batch coffee, but it also creates tea. It can make batched iced lattes, batched cold brew. A lot of customers use it as a base for their nitro coffee. It is a very versatile piece of equipment that also raises the game on the quality of what you're serving. If you want versatility, higher quality, more control, and the ability to serve your customers something that will genuinely delight them, then I highly recommend you get a ground control Cyclops brewer for your shop. To find out more information, visit their website over at groundcontrol.coffee. Today's episode is also brought to you by La Marzocco. La Marzocco has been making espresso machines by hand in Florence, Italy since 1927. Their dedication to their craft of making amazing espresso machines is equal to their dedication to the specialty coffee community and giving us well-built, intuitive pieces of equipment that make making great coffee possible. As a result of this, they've come out with several pieces of equipment that serve the specialty coffee community so well. The KB90 espresso machine is one of those. The KB90 introduced the straight-in portafilters for improved speed and ergonomics, auto flush for increased cleanliness and speed, and built-in scales to improve consistency and flow. These, of course, are so important for the everyday work of baristas, and La Marzocco has been the quintessential espresso machine for the industry for a long time because they answer that need so well with their equipment. So if you want something you can depend on with your business in mind, then I highly recommend you look into La Marzocco. You can find more information over at lamarzocco.usa.com. You can also reach out to one of their salespeople by emailing info@lamarzocco.usa.com. Okay, everybody. Well, today I wanted to talk with you about something I think is a little bit, maybe it's a balance to an episode that I put out a long time ago called Leadership Abandonment Syndrome, which is where you essentially view anybody who is a delegated authority under you is a release valve for your work, where you just kind of abandon them to the work. You don't give them a lot of feedback. You don't get involved. You're not very hands-on. You're abdicating your responsibility as an owner. And I won't go into it here. You can listen to that episode again. I highly recommend it. But there's another side of this that I think needs to be talked about, and that's when your involvement is actually toxic or not helpful. There's a lot of involvement that owners think they need to have that actually causes more confusion. So let me give you an example of this. Okay, so you hire a manager. You promote a manager, whatever it is, and you give them the responsibility to lead baristas and the cafe and the operations. And let's say you train them really well. All things considered, you've done a good job giving them the tools they need to do the work, all that fun stuff. But when you walk into the cafe, you see that something's not quite right. Now, the two baristas working there, they're just new hires. And you know that either they are ignoring what was said or they didn't hear what was said. But one thing's for sure, it's not what you want. Now, this could be something related to service or the quality of the beverage, the choice of music, whatever. But you as the owner walk in and you're like, man, this isn't quite right. That's not what I want, and you feel the need to insert your opinion or assert yourself into the situation to correct it. Now, it's your business. You can do that. But in the process of doing that, what usually ends up happening is more confusion than help. Confusion because you aren't necessarily the person that they answer to. Now, you do write the checks. You are the person, right? You're the boss. But technically, you're not their boss if you've got a manager. Their boss is the one responsible for them. And part of your job is going to be removing yourself or editing yourself, controlling yourself in situations like that where you see something amiss and you have the opportunity to assert yourself, but in doing so, create a few more problems, which is, who am I answering to? Or maybe even the baristas think now they're in real trouble because the boss, like the big boss says, we shouldn't be doing this thing. Now, it may in fact be that you've solved a problem, right? So they now won't do this again. But what you've done is you've undermined your manager's authority, and you've also created more work for yourself, because as you begin to be more assertive, you're going to start taking on responsibility to oversee the things that you should actively be giving away to the person you hired to do that job. So you're kind of not giving up authority, you're keeping it back for yourself because you can't control yourself. So what you need to do is this. In the process of delegating authority and actually respecting the position that you set up, and it's not even really about the person, okay? On the show, we've talked about how you don't want to create a position for a person necessarily. You create a position for the business. If you're needing a manager, it could be anybody, right? You can't create something based on personalities. You have to respect this position, the office of a manager, if you will. And part of that is exercising self-control to communicate in very structured ways. If you notice things in the cafe that need tending, you can just put that on a notepad and bring it to your manager. You can put it in a file, you can put it on your phone, and then when the meeting comes up, you can ask them about that. Not tell them. Notice I said ask them about it. Because sometimes there is a story behind what you see that actually makes sense. And it's critical that you get the background on the situation before making an assessment of the next action. So asking your manager about something rather than telling them to deal with a problem is the tack that I would take, because it offers a bit of a charitable assumption that this person has it under control. Now, maybe they don't have it under control. Maybe you asking them about it is going to make them say, I had no idea that was happening. But by asking, you also leave the possibility for them to say, yeah, I was going to tell you about that. We weren't able to figure out a way to have everybody do this thing until next week because, somebody was out, or there was a limitation on, our supply that was outside of my control. And so we couldn't do that until we got the supply of that thing. There's so many elements that could be at play here. And so not only is this a practice of self-control to wait until this meeting or to talk with your manager, but it's also a good practice to help you develop curiosity and help you reserve judgment until you have the entire story. These are all things that I think are really critical, especially when you're somebody who has just established a position like a manager in the infancy of that position, to really tend to it well. You don't necessarily need to wait until the meeting either. You could just ask about it anytime. I would encourage you to try and wait as long as you can. If it can't wait, if something very egregious is happening, then definitely, send them an email, call them up, ask them about it, and they'll say, oh, geez, I've told them before, I'll take care of it. Now the lines of communication are so clear, and you're not going around your manager, and you're establishing a certain respectful distance between you and the operations. That was kind of the whole point of the delegation in the first place. So to the degree that you don't abandon your leadership, you also need to practice self-control, charitable assumption, and structure the way you do address issues and interact with them so that the lines of communication remain clear and you're supporting everybody that works for you in the process. So I hope that this episode was helpful for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me, and I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break. From keys to the shop.